Now heading into game week 8, I've got 4 free transfers available and I'm thinking about using potentially some of them and of course looking to activate my bench boost for this game week. Now before we dive into today's video, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe as we are closing in on that 20k subscriber mark. I think we need like 50 people to hit that subscribe button, so if you haven't already, please make sure you are liking and subscribing. If you could probably hear as well, I do have a little bit of kind of like a cold. I don't know, my throat doesn't feel 100%, so I'm going to make it through today's video, but of course if there's like any like sudden cuts or you see me splutter a little bit, I do apologise, I'm a little bit ill, so yeah, if we can get a like on today's video just for ploughing through. Let's start off then with how my team got on in game week 7. I've been through it in quite a few other videos, so I'm not going to obviously delve into this too much. It was another green arrow, so it puts us, on I think maybe 4 or 5 consecutive green arrows now, all the way back from 7 million. Up to 2.7 million, so the plan is working. We're slowly getting there, of course, starting to break within to that kind of goodish ranks. I mean, there's still no really kind of determined good or bad ranks at this stage of the season. It's still very much all up to play with, so I won't worry about you to rank too much as long as your team's in a decent place. That for me is probably the better situation to be in. I really wish we'd have bench boosted. We had Caicedo on the bench who picked up 10. The other guys just played, so they got their points, but it would have been a good use of the bench boost. We would have got it out of the way. We would have had an additional decent 16 pointer on the bench as well, which would have definitely helped in terms of our green arrow there. But overall, not too bad from the side. Like I said, you can't grumble when you do get a green arrow, especially with a 500k increase. However, we do take in 4 transfers into game week 8. Like I said, we've still got the bench boost active, we've still got the free hit available, and we still do have the triple captain. So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing how my team is going to be lining up for the next few weeks, where I'm planning on playing the bench boost, and potentially ironing out some weeks where I might look to free hit, and of course, look to activate that triple captaincy. Now let's start off with my defense then, and if even I wasn't to bench boost, I think this defense, to be honest, just really picks itself. As you can see here, we're going to go for those double up in terms of Arsenal defenders, Raya and Gabriel. They are one of the best sides over the next weeks for projected clean sheets on the 11 of 5 model. As well, if we use the Rob T data as well, provided by Solio. Of course, if you want to go and check this out, there will be a link in the description. But as you can see here, the second best clean sheet opportunities heading into game week 8 with a 43% probability. You also saw in there that we had Senesi with Bournemouth. They've got a 23% chance, but it's just kind of one of those games where I don't think the bookmakers can really decide who is going to be the strongest side out of those ones. We've also got Rodon within our starting 11 with a 36% chance of a clean sheet, and I've been highlighting game week 8 and game week 9 as decent weeks to, of course, play your Burnley and Leeds players. They're up against some fellow relegation sides. The bookmakers as well here are suggesting there is a higher probability of Leeds keeping a clean sheet, despite, of course, it being an away fixture. But, of course, we've got Dubravka on the bench if we wanted to use him as well. So this is why I'm thinking about maybe getting a bench boost off, because if we could get like a Dubravka clean and then the rest of the guys just play, I know they've not got ideal fixtures, but if they can play and we can get like a 10 to 12 pointer from a bench boost, I'm going to be pretty happy with that, and it kind of just gets it out of the way, and as you'll see a little bit later with my side, maybe gives me a potential further route to go and get in some other players and obviously switch up our strategy a little bit over the next few weeks. But like I said, the defense for me, it really does just pick itself. Like I think if we're not going to bench boost, Anderson and Tarkowski make complete sense to bench. They've got really difficult fixtures this week. I think despite their positive DEFCON records, still probably only going to come away with like a 3, maybe a 4 pointer if they don't concede 2 or more goals. But for me, the defense, very easy, picks itself nice and easy. Now let's head into the midfield, and as you can see, again, with Ndai having that difficult fixture, I do feel my midfield probably just picks itself nice and easy. We've got Caicedo off the back of that 10-pointer, of course, has been a very consistent DEFCON beast, a great fixture up against Nottingham Forest. You do feel if Chelsea probably win that game, that is going to be the end of Ange Postecoglou throughout the international break. There has been murmurs that, Sean Dyche is ready to come and step into the role, so I do feel like Chelsea are probably going to, fully go for it. And I also feel if the Nottingham Forest players see that this manager, who they maybe don't like, is on the verge of being sacked, they could just down tools for one game, get a new manager in. it happens in football as well. Reinders has been a really frustrating player to own over the past few weeks, and during my transfer plans videos, I have been talking about potential replacements that I have been looking at to go for him. Of course, Salah is one of the standout picks there, but I think the next two fixtures are a little bit difficult. They're first up against Bournemouth, which doesn't feel like the most ideal fixture, given the fact that Crystal Palace have European football as well. They then follow that by Arsenal, which again just doesn't really feel like an attackable fixture for me. So I might as well just stick with Reinders for the next two and see how Salah pans out and see what his minutes are like after European football. Of course, earlier in the international break window, we were looking at Enzo Fernandez. However, we are going to have to wait for press conference updates from Maresca, as he did pull out from the last game with a knee injury. Of course, that might be just one of those international break injuries where, of course, players do just randomly pull out and then they're mysteriously available again for the weekend. I think it's probably going to be one of those, but of course, before I make any moves or kind of, firm in any transfers, then of course it is going to be, making sure that he is 100% fit and available. Semenyo, the form that he's in, his conversion rate is massively up. I think it was like 8% last year, all the way up to 35% this year. He spoke about it in a press conference after a Monday night or maybe a Friday night game on Sky, where he said he's obviously spoken to a sports psychologist. He's calmed himself down. He was always panicking within his mind in those bigger situations. This time, he's a lot more calm, a lot more composed, and I definitely think you are starting to see that with his finishing, and of course the increase in terms of output as well this season. I've said it for a large part of the season. I thought this year would be the Brian and Buemo breakout year, and that is definitely looking to be the case as well. Bruno Fernandes, a lot of people, I really feel like Bruno is Marmite this season. You either love him or you hate him, and I feel he's obviously getting a lot more hate right now off the back of 2 penalty misses. But I still look at it and I just think if he got one more defensive contribution last week, he would have got 5. He had chances as well. He forced the goalkeeper into a really good save. 2 good saves as well to deny him an assist. So I am looking at it. I am just thinking, after this Liverpool game, there is a really good run of fixtures coming up for Manchester United. It's just a fantastic run of games. I don't think he's lost penalties. He still has that ability to hit DEFCON. And I do just think he is going to be one of those nice players with no European football that is, of course, going to tick along. Now, a lot of people are offloading Bruno Fernandes this week for Bukayo Saka, and that is some of the plans that I have been looking at. However, I would rather have the pair of them and maybe downgrade one of my forwards. That is some of the options that I have been looking at within my transfer plans. It's getting rid of Bruno Fernandes, and it is bringing in for Reinders, Saka, and downgrading Gyökeres from our side to Lyle Foster. Of course, that works the next few weeks. We can get the bench boost out of the way. Lyle Foster and Burnley have Leeds this week and then Wolves next week. And then we've not got to care about that guy ever again. He could just sit third sub. I'm not going to manage his minutes. And the forwards this year have been extremely disappointing. And I don't really feel like I want to be in a position where I would like 3 forwards. So I am sat there to myself thinking, maybe we just bring in Saka and Bruno. It could be a big differential combination because, like I said, a lot of people are hopping off Bruno Fernandes this week. I don't think it's the most ideal fixture. However, longer term, the fixtures are definitely there, and it's not like he's all of a sudden a bad FPL option. He's still going to get some points. And I really think if he'd have hit defensive contributions and hit those penalties in, we would be looking at a guy that would pretty much be on the words of like essential for a lot of content creators, because he would be the second highest scoring midfielder and a lot more people probably would have him in their teams. Of course, it hasn't gone that way and he has missed the penalties, but you have to ask yourself, why do United keep getting winning penalties as well, and is that going to be sustainable? Maybe, maybe not. We're going to have to probably do a little bit more of a deeper dive and do some more research into that. But one of the players that I have been looking at today in kind of, a mist of just illness, and maybe the illness has got to my head a little bit, it's a man that a lot of us are writing off this season. It's Salah. Now, I'm probably going to get absolute pelters for this one in the comment section. I have been doing on Twitter, but I have been looking at routes. How do we get to Mohamed Salah? And maybe looking at a game week 11 free hit. Because by that point, we'll know who Crystal Palace, if they progress to the quarterfinal of the Carabao Cup, and whether or not that game week 17 blank might, of course, occur. It's very low probability at the moment, given the fact that Crystal Palace have got Liverpool within the next round. So by that point, we'll know. So maybe we could just get the bench boost out the way in game week 11, get rid of both Salah and Haaland for that difficult game, and really just attack the best fixtures for that game week. I think Arsenal got a good game. Chelsea have got a good game as well. Maybe Cole Palmer could be back at that point as well, and maybe just allows me to reshuffle up my Chelsea pack as well if João Pedro does continue to disappoint. So it is something to maybe think about. And I'm looking at the next fixtures, and I'm seeing United, one of the worst sides for XG conceded. I'm seeing Brentford, very similar pattern, and I'm seeing Aston Villa. The other side of the the other side of the City game is Nottingham Forest, who've been very disappointing, and West Ham as well, another side who've been extremely disappointing this season. I'm looking at it, and I'm just thinking to myself, maybe we need to be looking at Liverpool. If you look to the 11-to-5 numbers, and we've seen it over the past few videos that I've been doing, we have seen Liverpool right up there for projected goal numbers. And it's the same on the Rob T numbers for this week. They are the top side for projected goals. They just are, 2.15. Their clean sheet numbers are down, but the projected goals are up. And who's usually probably going to score, and who's been the most reliable Liverpool player throughout seasons? It's been Mohamed Salah. It just has been Mohamed Salah. And I am thinking to myself, a lot of us are probably boxing ourselves off where we can't get to a position to get back to Mohamed Salah. I've got 4 frees. What's currently running through my mind, is I either bring him in this week, we've got a route to go and get him into this week, and we can still have our full 15 and get the bench boost out of the way. Or we roll this week, we obviously play the bench boost, get it out of the way, then we downgrade that third striker spot, see how Salah gets on in the Manchester United game. If he pops off, we have a very easy route back to Mohamed Salah. And of course, he could be a super big differential. And I imagine there aren't too many teams at this point that will have both Erling Haaland and Mohamed Salah in them. So it is something to think about. He also offers, if he is back to the old Salah as well, a great captaincy option in 9, 10, 12 and 13. So could rival Haaland there as well. So it is just something that of course has been running through my mind, because I do think sometimes we build narratives for ourselves, right? We get in positions where we say, right, Salah's had, 7 bad games at the start of this season. He is now washed. He is no longer an FPL asset. And we did very similar thing last season with Erling Haaland, where we were like, look, the guy had a good start. Now he's washed. He's not the same player, right? This season, he's completely reversed it, and he's back to absolutely bagging and is just a machine for points. We could be seeing Salah maybe do something different. I imagine Slot has been deep over the international break looking at tactical tweaks on how to get the best out of his side. And I do just wonder whether or not they're going to go into this decent run of fixtures here and really just turn things on and get back to the Liverpool we saw from last season as well. And maybe Mohamed Salah is, of course, going to resume to those numbers, because there definitely has been a drop-off for him and, of course, Liverpool overall creativity as well. And that is probably the reason that a lot of people, of course, have offloaded Salah, including myself. But I always think, keep your options open, and I think if we do roll this week and take 5 into next week, we can be in a really strong, advantageous position where we can see if Liverpool and Salah are back, or of course make the subsequent moves we want to do with 5 in hand. Okay, let's complete my lineup then and take a look at my 3 forwards. They all seem very, very template. Of course, this is the kind of, game week 6 template team. Gyökeres, Pedro and Erling Haaland. Let's start off with the 2 players that have been a little bit disappointing recently. Let's start off first with Gyökeres. I have been toying around some ideas, if you've watched any of the transfer plans videos, to drop him down to a Lyle Foster, to drop him to a Jarrod Bowen, or drop him to a Walter Marder, and then use that money to, of course, either upgrade Reinders or Bruno Fernandes to Bukayo Saka. However, that does feel like a very, very luxury move. It isn't all of a sudden like Gyökeres is a bad player because he's potentially lost penalties. He's still going to have some goal share within that Arsenal side, but that goal share, if he isn't on penalties, definitely will have dropped. Like it will, but the fixtures are still good, and it never feels like a right move to potentially sell a player that, of course, is still, in the side, playing very good minutes, and of course the fixtures are there. The only concern I do have is it does look like Kai Havertz could be back within the next few weeks, and that will definitely start to eat into some of Gyökeres' minutes. João Pedro has had 2 weeks off, so hopefully he comes back a little bit more fit and fresh from this international break, because he definitely did seem leggy heading into it. He wasn't in great form either. 3 blanks in a row and only 1 shot within those 3 previous games. However, the Chelsea fixtures coming up are just succulent, stupendous. Palmer looks like he's going to be out. Delap's still out as well. So I do just think for 7.8 million, you're getting a guy who's going to be playing for one of the best attacking sides within the league and is going to get opportunities. And still, we don't know if like Enzo's out this week, could be the penalty taker. So, you know what I mean? A lot of people are looking to offload him, but if Enzo's out, this guy's definitely going to be on the pens as well for this side with no Palmer, no Enzo. He's going to be playing 90 minutes. So why would you not keep João Pedro, in my opinion? Like, I know he's not been great, but all the things there for me just seem like I would still keep with him because it could be one of those that he just absolutely goes off one of these weeks. All it could take is like, you know, Enzo out, gets a penalty, gets an open play goal, looking at a double-digit haul, and a lot of people are going, damn, I really regret, of course, taking out João Pedro. Our final player is going to be Erling Haaland. He's going to be the captain this week. Again, he's had only one game over the international period, went back early from the international break with Norway, and, you know, like I said, is looking really, really strong and comfortable at the moment. I obviously did allude to one of the players that I have been looking at, and it is Nicholas Woltemade. The next 4 fixtures for Newcastle United are just scrumptious, aren't they? Brighton, Fulham, West Ham, and Brentford. Some of the worst sides for expected goals conceded. Obviously at a very, very achievable price point with plenty of other decent, flexible players we can go for, and does seem to be in a really, really big purple patch at the moment for, of course, club and country. Has been banging a few in over the international break. Now, of course, if you are looking at Woltemade and expect him to be on penalties, I would temper those expectations down because, of course, when Anthony Gordon is on the pitch, he's going to be the #1 penalty taker for this side. We saw that in the Champions League. Woltemade actually won one of the penalties as well, and Anthony Gordon still took the penalty. So don't expect penalties from this guy, but open play threat definitely is there and is looking like a really good player that has settled nicely into the Premier League with some good fixtures coming up. Of course, there will be some rotation around Champions League as well, which would be my concern. And this are back within a few weeks. But I do think for the next 4, you definitely could milk the best out of Woltemade. And that is something that, of course, has crossed my mind over the past few weeks. I'm going to put my team into Fantasy Football Hub. We're going to have a play around over the next few weeks and take a look at some of my transfer plans. But yeah, that is how the team is going to be lined up, of course, if we weren't to make any transfers. Okay, so I have put my team into Fantasy Football Hub. Of course, you want to go check out their amazing website. I will leave a link in the description. First up is going to be if we were to obviously just roll this week, we get the bench boost out of the way, and then what we could do is something very, very naughty. As you can see, we've brought in Mohamed Salah. We've obviously brought in Richards for Tarkowski. And then we've obviously downgraded Gyökeres to Mark Gui. As the forwards just this year aren't really performing. And this is how the team would look. Of course, very tough in terms of captaincy for this week. Do we go Haaland against Villa or, of course, Salah against Brentford? We've got a real big, of course, toss-up there. I think the team for this one would look pretty decent across the board. We've obviously got Richards, who can just slot in here. We've got Anderson, who, of course, can just slot in for Senesi. We're still going to play Semenyo in that week. Game week 11 is, of course, where City face off against Liverpool. And this is really a week where, of course, we could be looking at a free hit. Of course, if Enzo Fernandez is available for that week as well, you know, I think this could be a really good week. We could get ourselves Saka in here for the best fixture that Arsenal have got over the next few weeks as well. So that could be option 1. We roll this week and, of course, take 5 into next week. Option 2 is using free transfers, I believe. So we would, of course, bring in Woltemade for Gyökeres. We'd bring in Saka for Bruno Fernandes. And we would bring in Enzo for Reinders. Now, of course, Enzo is flagged, so his predicted points are a little bit lower than to be expected. And I really like this as a move. I think, you know, it makes the bench boost look pretty decent across the board as well. And, of course, it's quite good for the team going forward through the next few weeks as well. As you can see, Enzo can come in here. We've got a really, really strong team for this week. Again, that might be worth maybe holding out the bench boost till 9 potentially with that one. The team just looking absolutely ridiculous across the board for that week. Game week 10 as well, also a pretty decent game week, and allows us just to build those transfers back up, heading of course into like game week 13 where people are of course looking to maybe wildcard in that week. Let's take a look then at my final option, and this would be the one that just involves downgrading Gyökeres, bringing in Lyle Foster, and of course bringing in Saka for Reinders. Now I've noticed that Foster is flagged and I haven't seen any news on this one, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of research after the video to see why he has been flagged, but that might potentially put a bit of a dampener in this one. But again, I do just think If he is fit and available, that is a completely fine bench boostable team. We can get through this week with that. Heading into game week 9, the team again looking pretty decent across the board. We might have a few benching headaches here and there, but overall the team is just looking absolutely ridiculous yet again. Having both Bruno and Saka, like I said, could be a little bit of a differential cheat code, and you know, one of those combinations that a lot of managers won't have, so could put me in a very advantageous position. Let me know what you think of my transfer plans. What options would you go for this week? I'm heavily leaning towards just rolling, getting the bench boost out of the way, and put myself in a great position to maybe go and get Mohamed Salah back in game week 9. Let me know what you think of that plan down in the comments section. Of course, if you've got any questions as well, get them in, as we'll try to answer as many as we possibly can. But thank you for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 8.